Hello, everybody out there in Embird world. Are you ready for Studio Next? I have been really delving into it, and I must say it's really nice to edit the nodes in Studio Next. And when I start doing that in some of my tutorials, you'll see what I mean. It's just, they seem smoother. You don't have to worry about jagged edges or anything. Everything is so fluid. So that's one good thing about it. There's so many others. This right here, what we're looking at is the mesh fill on lettering. And I'm going to start out with this tutorial only because it's quick and simple, and I'm going to try and compare the tools and toolbars of Studio Next to regular Studio. What I've noticed though, if you have both of them open at the same time, sometimes a tool or something will not work. I don't know if they share or what, or if it's just my computer. Maybe you're not supposed to have them both open at the same time. But I want to do it at first just to show you the difference between the tools. So if you look at this screen, you can kind of see that some of the tools up here look familiar. And along the side, these are your, fill tool. Your outline tool looks like this now. This is a mesh tool. It'll make a mesh right away, which is just a fill with the mesh inside. Is basically what it is, but you have different parameters for the mesh. You've got your hole, got your column with pattern. These are connections, those little connection stitches. If you look down here, when I hover, so whenever I hover over this, it's just showing me the last thing I was on. So that means, what that tells you is it's not even active right now. So it must be a tool to do something to another object. Oh, I know what it is now. It's a knife. It's the carving knife. I have forgot I didn't notice that. So if I click on the fill and drew, I'll just hit enter. Drew a fill object. Now you can see this is like darkened. So I can click on it and create, a carving edge in there, an indentation, and I'll hit enter. And if I click on this fill over here, and here's my generate tool is right here close to this window. Oops. My fill tool is here. My parameters is here. This is for jumps. This is so sim. This I believe is save. This is redo. Here's undo. Undo is black, but redo is not. Because, I haven't gone forward yet. And then zoom in and out is here as well. It's also over here. But at any rate, if I click on generate stitches, you can see how that got carved. I'm in 3D. If I want to zoom in on that, I can click the zoom button and I can swipe it with my finger and it just kind of zooms a little bit. Or you see how there's a plus, my cursor is turned into a plus sign. When you hit the zoom, that's what how you know that you're in Zoom. But at any rate, you can draw a box and just zoom in. If I want to zoom in right into that corner, it'll take me right into there. And then you can hit this to go 1-to-1. And again, I can click the zoom button and I could zoom in on the whole box. So there's my carving object. So I'll just click on it here and hit my delete button. So that's the carving tool. And so like I said, it is kind of hard to see what's grayed out and what's not. But that is grayed out. The hole is grayed out because I don't have a fill object selected. And I think you can make a hole in this carving object too if I were to select it. See, the hole is there. And I could click on it and I can just hit enter. I don't have to complete it. And it made a hole right there. Because holes and fills, you don't have to complete your object if you don't feel like it. So I'll Control Z on that. So these are your column with pattern. And this is your applique tool. And of course, there's so many ways to make applique. You could just, the options are endless. And this is your hole for appliques. Once you make them, you can make a hole. This is your measuring tape. And I do have a short video on the measuring tape. And this here is your freehand tool. And if I click on it, you'll see this window on the right, and then all your choices of freehand are here. So they're written out for you. Now the regular studio, when you click on the freehand tool right here, if you hold down this bottom arrow, you've got your choices here. So it's not really written for you, but you've got your manual, your outline, your column, your fill, sfumato. Now this one, what is the difference? I can't remember. Oh, this is a connection. I never used that for freehand. This is your sketch. Let's see, this is a auto column, and then this one is, oh, this is the pressure sensitive. I don't have a pressure sensitive tablet. And then these two are grayed out because nothing was made yet. This is a hole, and this is the carving. So, and then if you say you click on one, here's your window on the right, and you've got all your tools here, what to do after the stroke and so on. And you've got your min and max stitch lengths. This is, I believe it's the width. If you're, well, let's see. Let me think. Oh yeah, because the sample is down here to choose. So if it's a single stitch, of course, your width doesn't matter. But if you choose one of these, of course, then your width comes into play. So on Studio Next, you have all your choices written out for you. Let's just say if you went with an outline, and let's just say you chose, I don't know, just say you chose that as your outline stitch. There's your width, so the width of this would be 4. Minimum stitch. Since it's a triangle, I'll make them both the same. Max. I'm just clicking on the picture there and using my stitch button. And so then I'll go ahead and freehand it. You could see my stop. When I want to stop, I can click that. And after the stroke, you could see I have generate stitches chosen. So as soon as I finished this stroke, it generated the stitches. I could have had, do another stroke or finish the object. So the width is going to be the width of the candle wick, and this here is the spacing, min and max stitch. I know that isn't really intuitive, and it caught me at first, but it's your spacing, and I'll show you what I mean. So if I start drawing, so after the stroke this time, it's going to finish the object. So I think it's going to take the place of the stop button. I'm not sure. So just in case it does, let me do generate stitches, because I don't want this window to close. That one wasn't as pretty. And so these are really close together because I have the maximum stitch and minimum stitch the same. So they're uniformly spaced, but they're really, really close together. So if I put my max stitch at, say, 6, and I'd have to do this in parameters. So for right now, they're just expecting me to stitch another one. So I'll just go down here. Like I said, I could change that in parameters as well. So see, they're a little farther apart now. And they have this overlock, which I believe is the new patch. You can make a marrow outline for patches. I'll do this one. I don't know how it'll look, but so now it's waiting for another stroke. So I can pick up from here. I think it's going to connect right here. I think. I'm going to try and click away from it and see what kind of connection it. See how it made a little connection there? So we'll go ahead and click stop, and we'll generate. And so it looks like what it did, instead of making a connection there, it actually made the stitches there. I didn't realize that either. I mean, there's just so much that this program does. It's amazing. It is amazing. And you can't do this stuff in Editor. You need Studio to have something this powerful. So, and you can go to my website, WeQuilt Studio, and you can get the 10% off coupon code for Studio. So if you have Editor already, basic Embird, you can add Studio and get 10% off. I'll put that link down in the description. So that's your freehand. So this tool, this toolbar is pretty much the same. I mean, they've added the mesh, which is kind of nice. And what's interesting, though, is this is sfumato. And on the regular Studio, sfumato, you could see the camera here. Oh, let me stop freehand here. I was doing it here as well. Um, you know, it's got the S for sfumato and the camera. So when I was on Studio Next, I was looking for that S and I didn't see it, and I was like, oh, it's right there. So that's pretty much this. And this down here is your selection. You know, if you had an image up, it's the same. It's your magic wand. So I want to change the minimum measurement on this mesh. So before I go and show you old studio, regular studio, I'm going to just change these min and max stitches. And that's what's nice about the mesh. It's not like the old motif fills from regular studio. The mesh is perfect. You can set your stitch lengths. You don't have travel stitches that are interfering inside and jumps and, you know, messiness. The edges are real clean. If I hide the outline and just long hold on the eye right there, look at how perfect these edges are. I'm going to hit the magnifier and zoom in. Let me do options, guidelines, erase guidelines. I mean, look at these edges. And this is a mesh, so it's like a motif fill on steroids. But at any rate, let me go back to 1-to-1. So I'll click on the mesh fill, and I'm going to click on parameters right here. And the parameters window is going to be a little confusing when you first look at it. But let me just finish this min and max stitch and I'll go into all of this. But to get your min and max in the parameters, so you want to have mesh selected here. It will be selected because we had mesh selected when we open parameters. We had the mesh object selected, so it will be selected there. And then this is your window for mesh. And the mesh type that this is a net. The category that this is fractal. And the kind of fractal it is number 6. That's my favorite of the fractals. I just love it. So, and then if you click smooth, I noticed I didn't like it on most of my designs, but you'll want to play with that. I leave it off. The width on lettering has to be small, so I have it set at 2 mils. And granted, these aren't set when you first open it. And I noticed that even if I set the defaults, sometimes they don't stick, but I could be wrong. But when you store as default, we'll get into all that. But for right now, you could say, okay, I want to store that for mesh objects, but that means all the mesh objects are going to have an average width of 2, and so on, and everything else. You know, you could set it for all object types as well. So we'll get into that later, but for right now, I don't change the randomness. It just doesn't look good, usually. But these tabs up here, okay, we're into the net, but this first tab are your min and max stitch lengths and your layers, meaning how many runs. You know how when you branch something, you get 2 layers of stitches, you get your travel stitches, and then you get your backward paths that are your actual decorative stitch, you know, if you're working in outlines. But anyways, so there's usually 2 layers selected here as a default, but sometimes I've come to this tab and this has been a number 12. So you want to come to this tab always and see how my min length is always, this is the default. And this is something that I've noticed even if I've set my defaults or stored them as say 1.5 and 2.2, they don't stick, but it could be because I'm not doing it right yet. I thought I saved it for all objects, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So you can click here and make the numbers go up and down, or click on the picture. And what I've noticed is this window works better in mils. If you're in inches, and I'll show you how to switch to inches, but if you're in inches and you come to this window, it's weird. The slider will work, and when you get back to the big window, yes, your inches will show, but if you're in inches and you try to put your inches in this field, then when you come back to this big window, they translate into as if you put mils here. So I've already told Embird about that, so I'm sure they'll fix it. But at any rate, we're in mils, so you can put the mils here, either backspace over it or slide over it. So I'll put 1.5 and 2.2. That's usually what I like to see, like for quilting stitches. For a quilting stitch, if it were traditional big quilting stitch, big stitches, they'd both be 2.2, but you know, for anything that's very consistent, they'd both be 2.2. So that's set there. This is the effect, you know, where the these are new effects, fisheye, ripple. They don't look good for this design, I don't think, but you can play with those. If you select one of them, say ripple, you can set these numbers here, which I haven't played with. Now this is grayed out because I believe intensity is just for fisheye. Now this one is highlighted and this one is grayed out, and it's also for black hole. So for ripple and swirl, maybe you've got angle, you've got count. I don't know, I haven't played with it. So, and swirl. Okay, so swirl has got this grayed out and swirl is only intensity. So you can play with that. So that's what this is. This is your effect window. And then, you know, this was your original net window. And then this one is if you want to move the design, you know, and skew it and so on. It doesn't look good for me so far, but I'm sure there's a place for it. So this tab and this tab are the two most important. And then once you have those set, then you do want to go to the overall button or tool and click on it, and you'll get a whole list of tabs again. Now the first tab, these reference settings, these are in Studio, and you may want me to bring up Studio now because this might get confusing. So let me go ahead and bring it up. So I'm going to click on Embird down in my taskbar. This is another project that I'm going to do for the next tutorial. This is a mesh fill as well. It's black work mesh. And it's just beautiful. You could see how perfect it is. So I'm going to go into regular studio from here. Let's see. I'll just bring this in. So in regular studio, if I go into parameters, you see this shield here. Okay. And I'll click on main, and then I'll do Alt Tab to get back to Studio Next. So this is your main, which is kind of analogous to this main. The only difference is you notice on this main, the only thing that's similar is reference width and reference height. That's your reference width and reference height for when you make a border. Okay, the width that you're working in when you make a border is 5 mils by 5 mils. So these other numbers are not even on this Studio Next tab for main settings. The only thing you see here is your reference width, the 2, the width and the height, 5 and 5. And then they added this series of floating stitches tool. So I haven't really played with this that much, and I'm assuming if you have, from what it said on the Embird site, is that if you have a long jump, you could leave it as a jump, or you could put a needle points in between the jumps. I'm not sure. So I'll have to go over that. I guess it's if you if you have something jumping across your hoop, maybe you wanted to put at least one stitch point, and then finish making its jump. So that could be what that's for. So I'll just leave it like this. This was the default. And combine arranged outline parts was always selected here as the default, I believe. That's just your branching. And you do want to have that checked, because what Embird will do then is when you branch a bunch of outlines, like for instance, if I'm in regular studio and here's my L, there's my O, my V, my E, they're separate letters, but when you branch them, let me select them and I'll go into parameters here in the shield, and you'll see that it's checked down here as well. It's always checked. So when you branch them, Embird's not going to keep the integrity of your letters. It'll try, but if you want to have a pretty branching and beautiful flow, you may have, letters that are backward paths, meaning the decorative stitches will maybe be part of the V and then come into the E a little bit. And so your V isn't all by itself anymore over here in the object window. And I'll show you what I mean. So right now, yeah, these letters look like they're touching and everything is all great, but they don't start and end in the same spot, so they have to be branched. So up here, I'll click Arrange Outline Parts, and it's even going to put a connection here between the L and these 3 letters. if I clicked arrange outline parts, no connections, then there would not be a connection here. And it's really cool though, because when you click this first one, Embird makes a connection, but then over that connection, it puts the decorative stitch. So it's nice. It just looks like it's supposed to be there. So anyway, so I'll click Arrange Outline Parts. And here's the connection. And I'm just going to click outside and then click up here so that when I generate stitches, you can see, you know, it's got a travel stitch under it, connection or a travel stitch, but then it's got the decorative stitch over it because I clicked that first button. And what you'll see is, since we combined these parts, meaning sometimes we're going to have long letters, sometimes we're going to have short letters, meaning, I shouldn't say long letters, but like there, the part of the E for this backward path is missing, you know. So, and that's a travel stitch. There's a bat. Now the O is completely on its own because Embird was able to keep the O by itself. And then here the U, let me ungroup it up here. I'm not a U, it's a V. So the V, you know, it is extended. It's the backward path has gone into this part, but it's okay for us here because everything is perfect. There's exactly 2 layers of stitching, travel stitches and decorative stitches. But if I wanted to go back in time and get back to my individual letters, I may have a problem with that because, you know, if I control A and I select outlines, backward paths, and then select invert selection to select the travel stitches and then delete those travel stitches, I think, oh yeah, I got back to my word, but my word is all, you know, O is the only one that's its own letter. Well, the L is, but it has this. If I hit edit, it doesn't have that. That must be attached to the E. So the L is all by itself. But the E, if I hit edit, I would just have to delete that node. And now the E is, you know, but if I go and attach it there, you know, so I'd have to go in if I wanted to separate the letters. I'd have to edit this, click here, whoops, click here, right click, split object, and then here's the E, here's the other one, but this one has a tie, so they're not exactly meeting up. So let's see, if I hit edit, it's got to be reversed. That's the ending. This is the beginning. Reverse stitches. Move the starting point to the ending point of the previous object. Click that. Now these 2 can be combined. Transform, combine outlines. So there you go. Now I have my E back all by itself. But it's not showing the arrowhead anymore because I don't know why, because of what I did to it, because I split it up or what have you. So I'll just right click, hold, let go, set identical parameters, and there you go. So my E is back. And then I can move everything around. But, oh, it's not back. I'm missing this part of it. So you get the idea. So, but even if you have, just so you know, even if Control Z to get back to my letters. Okay, even if you unselect that, I mean, Embird's going to try to preserve your letters, but sometimes it can't. If you want a pretty stitch out, it can't be preserved. So my thing, what I always do, I always save the original. And you could see up here, I don't know if you could see, but I have the file named Orig Hello Audrey 1. That's the name of the font. Oh, I didn't put the word love after it. But I have it, saved as the original. So do I always do that? No. I mean, I forget. But one good thing to note about Embird, when they branch, they always branch with exactly 2 layers. And other softwares cannot say that. There are other very, very expensive softwares that when you branch, you don't know if you're going to get 2 layers here, 3 layers here, 1 layer there. You just don't know. So Embird's been doing this for a long time, so they know what they're doing. And you can't get this kind of precision with any other software. I've tried them all. Believe me. So uh, anyway, so you do want to have that checked. And like I said, even if you have it unchecked, it really, Embird will try. But if you want to pretty sew out, then you're going to just let it combine it how it needs to combine it. So back to Studio Next. So at any rate, that's the first tab on overall, on the shield. The second tab, well, there you see your fill, start, end gaps, your column start, end gaps, and your minimum stitch length. So in regular Studio, if I go back in to the shield, so here's your fill, start, end gap of 2, your column start, end gap of 0.2, fill, start, end gap, column start, end gap. Minimum stitch length is down here, whereas minimum stitch length was up here. I never changed these anyways. Here we have additional density and additional pull, but those two are in a different window. So old Studio, everything seemed to have been on one window, whereas over here, you only got a few things here. I never touched this anyways. Minimum stitch length you might want to change, but I never change it even on regular Studio. The third tab, here's your additional pull and additional spacing. So these two here. In regular Studio, it's called density. In Studio Next, it's called spacing. And I think that's because a lot of the other programs use the word spacing. Or maybe it's just easier for people to understand the word spacing than the word density. So this is your density, additional pull. I never fill that out. I never filled it out in regular Studio either. So far, this one and this one, these two I don't change. And this one, this is just for your borders. So, and I don't touch that yet. And I think this is just clicked by default. So far, these 3 tabs, I don't really mess with. This is the one I do. These are your tie-ups. And in regular Studio, there they are there. So that kind of looks the same. And I pretty much change the way I'm doing my tie-ups now, because I noticed if you make them smaller, they follow a better pattern. This might be too small, but we'll see. But I like the pattern that Embird chooses when the tie-ups are small. It seems to go back and forth in a more correct manner. So I set these all same. The manuals I keep at 1 tie. So 6 is the max. You can't go any farther. If you hold your right mouse, you can go lower. And again, my stitch length, I made 0.7. And then these are your offsets of your underlays. And that tab is here. It says offsets. That's pretty much the same. They just show pictures of it, you know, your fills. And here's your what a column looks like and so on. But, you know, this is your edge underlay and your zigzag underlay is kind of like, it's really this inside these hash marks, but here you could see it better. You can understand it better when with this picture. But I make mine 50 and 50 on the fill in the column because that makes your edge underlay closer to the object edge, and you get a cleaner edge. Sometimes you can't make it 50%. You have to go back to the default of 100. So you would click on here and turn it to 100, you know. But because, you know, then sometimes if you make it 50, it's too close to the edge and then your underlay shows. So you just have to look at your design and see. I think this just means the applique of the column stitch. So I could have left it at 50, but I'll just leave it at 100 for now. And whatever you put your edge underlay at, your zigzag underlay has to match because they need to interlock. You could see how the zigzag sticks up and the edge underlay is just under it. Well, that's because this edge underlay stops this zigzag from pulling the fabric in, because the edge underlay stops it. So you want them to match pretty much. So that's what I set those to. So far these 2 tabs are the ones that I use. And then this is the stitch lengths of the fill underlay. We go back to regular studio. Yeah, those are lengths. Those are your lengths. But if you go into parameters, now granted we're in outlines, so let me hit OK. Let me draw a fill. If we go into the fill, here's your spacing of your underlays. So I'm hoping that there is a spacing. If I go back to my mesh, well, mesh doesn't have underlay, so we'll have to pull up a fill object to make sure we have our underlay spacing in there. So let me go back to overall. So these are for your stitch lengths, and I don't usually mess with those unless you need your stitch lengths to be shorter or longer of your underlay. So basically for this, I don't touch that. I don't touch that or this. I touch this one for my tie-ups, and this one's for my underlay. The distance from the edges. And optimized and scaled is what we usually select and just make it a percentage. You could make it absolute and then you'd put, you know, how many mils you want your offset from your, how many mils you want your underlay to be from the object edge, but I would just leave it at that. So these two tabs are the ones that I usually use in overall. So now you want to save these settings. So these three blue buttons, you'll see these a lot in Studio Next. And if you click on, you know, they're for saving and so on. So I want to save these settings as my default parameters. So I click here. And then it gives me all these choices. So the way I see it is, what is it that I'm saving? Okay, what is it that I want to save? Well, I was just in the overall window. Here it is here in the overall window. So I want to save those settings. So I'll click that. Okay. And then I'm not sure if I have to click apply. Just seems to me that clicking apply would actually be referring to, we want to apply these parameters to the object we have selected. Like, just like in regular Studio, when you click apply, you leave the window open and you generate stitches. That's what I'm thinking apply is referring to. So, like I said, once I store the default parameters of overall, I think that's it. I'm done. I don't even think I have to click hold parameters for new objects, because in regular Studio, that just means, well, you're holding them for new objects because the parameters that you just selected aren't actually the defaults, but you do want to hold them for, you know, what do they call it? For new objects, okay? And then you could say that. So I don't even think you need to do that. If I saved them as my default, they're saved. Now, what I've been finding is, since this is still new, it's still like a beta version, when you click store as default for overall, for this overall window, that actually is saving. The default is saving. Even if I close down the program and open it back up again, my overall settings, you know, this 6 tie-ups and everything for overall does hold. But what I have been finding is that if I click on, say, well, it looks like I have just the outline selected here. I don't have the mesh selected this time. So I have the outline selected. If I close this window, you'll see if I hit done, I just have the outline selected. I could select them all, just so you know, just like in regular Studio, Control A, they're both selected. If I select them both and go back into parameters, you can see I have a choice. Do I want to select the mesh or the outline? You know, so you don't have to waste a lot of time closing and opening. Everything is here, which it was there in regular Studio as well. If I click on, you know, say the mesh, if I go to try and save these mesh properties, they don't save. So if I come up here, click the blue dots, store as default for mesh objects, and if I click that, it doesn't hold. It doesn't even hold if I stay and keep this design open. If I click done and I make a new mesh object, click shape ellipse. Hit enter. Oh, I kind of messed it up. I knew I clicked twice, but that's okay. But if I come into parameters, do you see how the mesh just went right back to the stippling, which is Embird's default? So just so you know, the overall will hold your defaults. The other ones won't. So now you want to save these settings. So these three blue buttons, you'll see these a lot in Studio Next. And if you click them, you know, they're for saving and so on. So I want to save these settings as my default parameters. So I click here. And then it gives me all these choices. So the way I see it is, what is it that I'm saving? Okay, what is it that I want to save? Well, I was just in the overall window. Here it is here in the overall window. So I want to save those settings. So I'll click that. Okay. And then I'm not sure if I have to click apply. Just seems to me that clicking apply would actually be referring to, we want to apply these parameters to the object we have selected. Like, just like in regular Studio, when you click apply, you leave the window open and you generate stitches. That's what I'm thinking apply is referring to. So like I said, once I store the default parameters of overall, I think that's it. I'm done. I don't even think I have to click hold parameters for new objects, because in regular Studio that just means, well, you're holding them for new objects because the parameters that you just selected aren't actually the defaults, but you do want to hold them for, you know, what do they call it? For new objects, okay? And then you could say that. So I don't even think you need to do that. If I saved them as my default, they're saved. Now, what I've been finding is, since this is still new, it's still like a beta version, when you click store as default for overall, for this overall window, that actually is saving. The default is saving. Even if I close down the program and open it back up again, my overall settings, you know, this 6 tie-ups and everything for overall does hold. But what I have been finding is that if I click on, say, well, it looks like I have just the outline selected here. I don't have the mesh selected this time. So I have the outline selected. If I close this window, you'll see, if I hit done, I just have the outline selected. I could select them all, just so you know, just like in regular Studio, Control A, they're both selected. If I select them both and go back into parameters, you can see I have a choice. Do I want to select the mesh or the outline? You know, so you don't have to waste a lot of time closing and opening. Everything is here, which it was there in regular Studio as well. If I click on, you know, say the mesh, if I go to try and save these mesh properties, they don't save. So if I come up here, click the blue dots, Store as default for mesh objects. And if I click that, it doesn't hold. It doesn't even hold if I stay and keep this design open. If I click done and I make a new mesh object, click shape ellipse. Hit enter. Oh, I kind of messed it up. I knew I clicked twice, but that's okay. But if I come into parameters, do you see how the mesh just went right back to the stippling, which is Embird's default? So just so you know, the overall will hold your defaults. The other ones won't.